Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll call the meeting to order at 9:35. We have everybody present. Thank you very much. The approval of the agenda. Any changes to be made to the agenda? Yes, Councillor Doherty. If you use your microphone, I might even consider it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Could we add an item to discuss perhaps changing the date of the meetings?
Date of the meetings.
Jump in, you can comment on that, but it's not appropriate for us to make any sort of decision about changing dates of the meetings at this. That's a substantive motion and we need to provide notice on that.
Okay.
So you can make mention of your interest in that and then we can talk offline about how to facilitate that discussion at a meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Other items? Seeing none, look for a mover to approve the agenda as printed. Councillor Neal, seconded by Mr. Heineman. Further discussion? Seeing none, those in favour, those opposed, you have an agenda. Confirmation of the minutes of September the 18th. There has been one correction, which was distributed by email. Don, can you give me the reference for that? It'll be on page, well, they're not numbered, just there they are, page 4 or page 5. And it'll be bottom of page 4.
Sorry, you want to explain that?
On the minutes?
Yes, I just noticed an omission, I thought, in the discussion of the louvers on the domes of the courthouse, the cupolas, whether there was going to be just one type of louver rather than the present two types of louvers. And there was some comment on that. It wasn't a clear statement that I thought I heard that when the domes were going to be rebuilt, there would be just a single style of louver. And so I think the clerk has made a change to include that.
I've confirmed that there was a comment from Mr. Leary regarding that the louvers would be uniform and that will be reflected in the updated minutes.
Good, thank you. Other comments on those minutes? Seeing none then, a motion to approve them by people who were there. Mover, Jeremy. Seconder, Don Taylor, thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, those in favour, those opposed, you have minutes for September the 18th. Pecuniary interest disclosure for today. And as ever, if something does come up and you realise you're caught, let it be known at the time. Otherwise, I see none. Presentations? None. Delegations? Briefings? None. Business? Cultural heritage? Not at all. Okay, down to stat business. Pre-consultation on 85 King Street East and 46 Simcoe Street. And a reminder that we do this under the first part of the Part 4 rules, i.e. the staff introduces the application, the committee members can make comments and ask questions, members of the public can speak once for up to 5 minutes with comments and questions, and we stop at that point. Ryan, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to go through that myself. This is an opportunity for committee members to have some direct feedback to the applicants prior to them submitting a formal permit application. We have 2 of these type matters before you today, and I'll give you a quick overview of the first one, and then I will turn it over to the proponents themselves to go into a little more detail and perhaps respond to some of the comments they've received thus far. But we encourage comments and questions from this group at this point before the proponents finalize their plans and come back for final or for full permit. So it's a bit of a discussion today. So the first application is at 85 King Street East and 46 Simcoe Street. The property is on the southwest corner of King Street East and Simcoe Street. It includes 2 separate lots, as I mentioned, 85 King, which is the large Victorian here, built in 1877, I believe. And the coach house on Simcoe Street, which is recently severed as a separate lot. and the app proponents. The designation is both individual from 1984. It was designed by Power and Son for Robert Kent, who is the owner of the British American Hotel. And it was designated in 2015 as part of the Old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District, and it's rated as significant to the district. So what is before you today? And again, I will turn it over to the proponents to give you details, but just as an overview, the applicants are seeking feedback on their plans to construct two-story detached garages along a shared property line between 46 Simcoe and 85 King East in roughly the area noted in the yellow circle here. The building will be approximately 217 square meters. There is to be no new residential unit in this building. There is also to be an approximately, let me just go through some of these pictures first before I give you more details. This is the view looking from the driveway and looking northwest on the property into the yard of where the new building is proposed. This is a view from King Street East looking towards the water, just to the in that open space is what's proposed. And then these are the plans that were provided and were circulated to committee members for comments. The new garage is to include a conservatory component on the north end of the building facing King Street. It's approximately 5 meters by 6 meters, single story. So the plans were provided by Michaela Hughes Architect, Inc., and a heritage overview was provided by Mr. Bruce Downey, and those are all circulated and included in the agenda package. In terms of what we've received thus far, our engineering department has noted that easements are going to be required to ensure legal access to facilitate vehicle movements on the property. Our land use team noted that this is designated residential, and it's a site-specific zone in the old City of Kingston bylaw to recognize the property as one property and for zoning purposes. Accessory structures are permitted in the zone. However, there will be some amendments required to accommodate some of the performance standards of that zone, which is through a separate process under the Planning Act, as well as a consent application to amend the right of access easements that come in from Simcoe Street to allow access over the shared or over the adjoining properties. From a heritage planning perspective, a number of comments were included in our report from our preliminary review. The applicants are required to demonstrate that this proposal will comply with the terms of and guidelines and policies of the Old Sydenham District Plan. Some of the points that we noted, we were just asking for some clarification on the roof profile of the new building. As well, we encourage some consideration to the blank wall feature facing King Street, which is this on the bottom of your screen. We noted that given the natural palette of materials proposed, we were discouraging the glass railings, which I noted in the plans. And we also encouraged the applicant to complete the garden wall, which is currently in a half-completed stage with the concrete structure. And we would encourage that to be completed with the stone veneer as proposed. And one concern that's not noted in the report, but is worth mentioning, is the plans do propose to make alterations to the neighbor's garage, which overhangs on this property slightly. It's an 1840s structure, partially obscured, but still in its original form on that side. And it's worth noting that there will be an impact to that. So our further comments will be, full analysis will be undertaken as part of the heritage permit application, but those are our preliminary comments at this time. Similarly, this was circulated to members of this committee, and those comments from the 3 members who replied are included in your agenda package. So with that, I will turn it over to the proponents to go through their overview.
Good morning. My name is Bruce Downey, and I'm working through the office of Michaela Hughes Architect. I retired my license in April of this year, And I've been working with the owner, Steve Sorensen, since 2015 on alterations to this property, beginning to understand what the property is made up of, what needs to be repaired. I'm accompanied here this morning by the owner, the contractor, Mark Peabody, who is working on the project, Mark Tao, a planner from IBI, in case there are questions on planning, although I'm hoping we can focus on heritage this morning, heritage attributes, and also legal representation. Mr. Hickey is here as well, in case there are any issues along those lines. This is a somewhat complicated situation, and so we've handled it very carefully, we think, and we appreciate this opportunity for a pre-application. Ryan has done a good job in giving you an overview, and you have the package with all the information in it. But I thought what would be good is to, and I've used many of the same pictures, same presentation photos, so there won't be a whole lot of new information that you get. But you'll see in the picture that's here now, there's a, this is how the property was. And it was fairly open through the side. Maybe I'll use this one. It's probably easier for me. And this is the property, this is the carriage, this is the main house, this is the carriage house, and the yacht club is down here, for those who are unfamiliar with the area. And this shows, really, I've worked on a number of heritage properties, and this is a true mansion. This is really an incredible piece of work. The basement's my favorite space. It's grand, even there, and it's pretty astonishing. When I first started working on this building, this porch on the east side was in a severe state of decay. The front steps, which are a lovely curved railing and steps, were in a severe state of decay, actually a little bit questionable to walk on them. And the west porch on the other side was decayed. The shingles were in, the slates were beginning to fall. All the flashings were beginning to decay and rot. The pointing needed work. It really was endless. It was astounding, really, the amount of work that had to be put into this particular property. And so this particular wall here, which faces Simcoe Street, this is just a little bit of background as what the last 4 years have brought us, is this wall, which is along Simcoe Street, was taken down to grade, totally to grade. All the stone was noted, marked. New stones, which you can see are dark, were cut because they delaminated or were broken, and a new cap was placed on it, metal cap was placed on the stone wall, and it was reconstructed in exactly the same order as it came down by Edgewater Masonry Services. And this porch has had severe decay in all components of it. It was totally dismantled. I've never experienced a lot of things I've experienced at this property, but this was one that was totally dismantled, piece by piece, taken to a shop in Ottawa, and they had to refabricate to match some of the pieces, but about 80% of the original wood and material is there, and it's being reconstructed, and there's a metal roof going on this fall. The other porch on the other side will be dealt with in the same way. This scaffolding was put up in order to replace all the slate on the roof, to repair many broken cresting pieces, to clean and repair or replace any metal flashings that were at the top. A significant exercise. And as well, in this, there was a time when a tree used to stand right about here, and it fell, and it took out the gate, it took out all this railing, and the railing was recast to match the existing, and the gates were reinstated in order to maintain this entry. The front porch steps have been totally replaced to match the existing, or the original porch. The carriage house was also in a state of decay. The floor of the carriage house, which you could actually get under, was a concrete floor with steel beams, and those were all bolstered and the floor reset. Blind windows were replaced with windows. So the stone opening is the original stone opening, but there was a blind or a stone panel each where the windows are. In these pictures, you can see this was the roof system that was there before, a metal roof, and it's been replaced with a new metal roof. And the roof insulated, and you can see that the configuration of the building has remained essentially the same. So we're dealing with today, as Ryan pointed out, is a carriage house that's along the western boundary of the property. And it's circled here, but it's actually shown here. And this also shows how it relates to construction of the neighboring property, and it identifies a severance that occurred. There was a proposal, and I think it's in your package. The proposal isn't, but the reference to it. There was a link discussed about joining the main house to the garage once upon a time in that past 4 years as a carport, because this isn't wasn't sufficient at the time to house vehicles, and so this was renovated as a dwelling, and a carport was suggested here as part of the landscaping. At that time, there was discussion and there was a preference for a garage along this property line, but we went to have a carport instead to keep that yard open. So the new garage carriage house, this part is 46 Simcoes. I'll just back up so you can see that. You can see this is 46 Simcoe here. So that's the garage that you will see on the left-hand side of the drawing, right here. So this is a 13-foot-high garden wall, and there's another property along Simcoe on this side of the wall. This garage has to be separated from this garage with a fire separation along the property line. And then there are two garages on the 85 King side. This property is zoned and carries the possibility of having 3 units. It had 3 units in it when we got it. In the severance, the 3 units were retained, but 46 Simcoe became a unit, and then there were 2 units remaining for the main property. At the end, as Ryan pointed out, there's a conservatory suggested as a garden room, really, and it was something that I suggested because the original drawings, the original plan for the house was to have a conservatory facing, at that time, the way the building is configured now, Simcoe Street. And it was a glassy structure, which you'll see later in the presentation, I believe is also indicated in your package. The garage has an upper level, and the upper level, in order to reduce the massing that you would see, the upper wall has been set back at each end so that you don't have a 1.5-story building at each end of the property. This portion of wall, which remains, and you'll see in the elevation, is enclosing a staircase to get to that second level, and also offers the opportunity of the roof of the greenhouse to lean against that portion of the building. Here you will see the conservatory and the 2 garages on 85 King Street and the garage at 46 Simcoe with the upper deck with the walls set back. So the wall is actually here. The roof goes over it, so it's partially covered. So there's a bit of a shadow that's back here, and the same thing occurs on the north end. The stone wall here, presently it's concrete, but the stone wall will continue out to King Street. We're showing it as an angle to fit along the edge of the roof of the conservatory. We have to have a fire-rated assembly on the property line. You see this is a view from King Street, primarily glassy. This is to give you a general impression of what that would be like. The conservatory that we will be showing you in the historic conservatory, if anything, it would lean more towards the historic conservatory than having a window configuration like this. But we thought it important to at least demonstrate where we were going with this. This is the upper balcony, and this is the wall that encloses the staircase. At the other end, the south end of the development, I'll see what I did there. Oh, poltergeist. Okay, so at the other end, there's a shaded balcony. This is the original garage roof at 81 King. This is the garden wall at the south end of 85, and the balcony that will look south. But the wall is set back well from this property line. So this is, I didn't really attempt to make anything pretty. I wanted you to see how the garage was related to in massing to its neighbor, and it would have the garages come to the same distance from King Street as this end wall of the garage at 81 King, which is right here. And so you will see a small angled section of that stone wall that the greenhouse is behind. So there will be a small portion of the new development that will be visible from Markland. Now, the carriage house, the character of the carriage house, when Steve asked me to look at this, I wasn't really certain at first how to approach it and how to go about it so that it might be consistent with what is in the area. And in the immediate area, there are a series of carriage houses on various properties. I think I count at least 4 that they're right on the property line. They have a shed roof. Some of them have shed dormers. Some of them have peak dormers. They're a 1.5-story structure, and some of them are quite long, as you can see. And the one on King Street's quite long, and there's one behind the Belvedere as well in this immediate neighborhood. It's a common type of construction. It's an ancillary space. It's diminished in its architectural presentation from the main property, and we are hoping to perform the same kind of architectural treatment at 85 King. So the character of the carriage house of the proposed garages is to be quite similar to the existing carriage house. The landscaping plan that I'm showing here just gives you an idea of where hard surface would be and soft surface, and how the proposed conservatory relates to a gardened area and the porches that are there. One of the main issues really is proximity of these two buildings. Presently, there is this concrete wall that my employer, Michaela Hughes, my former partner, is standing on. She's measuring the height of the wall as we develop the drawing, so we can create something that relates to its environment. But there is an issue as you move along this wall to how we interface with the existing garage, which remains of the existing garage of 81 King. Now, 81, this garage did extend a bit further, and this portion of the roof has been removed for the new construction. I think it was to align other roof configurations at 81 King. But as we come close to this building, we want to be able to continue to maintain this portion of the stone wall, and we don't want water to collect up in here, and it would be quite close because the 46 Simcoe portion of this site, in order to get into the garage, requires the garage to be set back as close to the property line as possible. We've suggested setting it right up against the building, and what these white triangles are here are to demonstrate a water diversion. So we would come right up to the building, we would construct these drainage routes that would be on the other side of a wall that would come along here in order to divert water as it came down the roof out towards a gutter system that is being placed in here for 81 King, and also out towards a gutter system that would be dealing with this water from 81 King, and it would have to go around the corner at 40 Simcoe. To have it a bit further apart it could be done. We could have a built-in gutter. There could be a series of ways in which this could be dealt with. This is one. What we're trying to stay away from is leaving a little gap here of about a foot that water could possibly get down into. Now, inside the garage, the garage will come to about here. But inside the garage, there will be a steel structure on 85 King's property that will support the second floor and the roof. But all of the stone will be exposed on the 85 King side. So you can just go into the garage and repair the stonework. We did the same type of construction at 40 Simcoe, where there was a garage that bumped up against the end wall of this same historic garage of 81 King. We'll probably pretty soon have it totally enclosed. And we left that wall open so that the stonework could be repaired. And we have a gutter system that takes water away between the very small space between the garage at 40 Simcoe and the end wall of this carriage house. So this drawing shows this end wall of the new garage blown up, and those are the little triangular white triangles that I'm showing where rainwater comes out and drains in two different directions. You won't see them, they're just hidden in behind that wall. This though gives you a pretty good impression of how we're going about this construction. The lower portion is stone here, and the upper portion is wood. It's a 1.5-story structure, so there's minimal headroom set in here in order to keep the profile of the building down. And we popped up a couple of dormers, shed dormers, a little bit, just to give some relief in headroom along the edge and to allow light into a space that offers great opportunity for a recreation area on the second level of this property for 85 King and this property for 46 Simcoe. And this also shows you the conservatory at the end. The doors are overhead doors, and they will be wood, and they'll have a glass panel in them. These will be double-hung windows, metal clad. What I've done is where that's the end wall of livable space, and that's the end wall of livable space, I've continued the rhythm of the window pattern, but left it just open. So there's a sheltered area, and there's an open area at these areas, but it does offer relief from if this was a 1.5-story wall at the end, we think. So this is the end, and you can see the porch at the north end, and this is the conservatory. And this is the south end, this is the garden wall. This is how the wall that's set back in shadow, and this is what were white triangles. I've shown it red here, so it stands out, the water diverter, I call it, but it brings water away from the building. Here also shows the greenhouse, the conservatory that was planned for 85 King and is on the original drawings. We managed to get original drawings, and it was never built. You can see it. You can see it at 85 King Street. It has the stone base, but then the upper part was just completed with a flat roof and large windows. So we would like to create something that echoes that conservatory as a garden room at the end of the garage structure in order to relate activities in the garden to the garage building, and also reduce from the street view the impact of an end wall. Although stone walls like this one are quite common in Sydenham Ward. That's it.
Open for committee comments, questions. Done.
This is quite a complicated project, but I just want to clarify a couple of things. The garage door, I was looking for the dimensions in the notes, but I couldn't really find them. The garage doors look quite wide, so it looks as if each door can accommodate 2 cars. So we're talking about a double-car garage for 46 Simcoe and 4-car garage for 85 King. Is that right?
The doors are 20 feet wide, so you could get, if you were driving, we were considering that because of we have staked out the garage, where the garage wall would be, and driven a vehicle into the yard and pretended we were driving into the garage just to make sure that everything worked okay. But that particular space, in order to turn and get in and turning it back out, it's better to have something a little more generous than, there might only be 1 car in it and lawn equipment or something like that, but it needs a fairly wide door. And I did go through a period of time where I had smaller doors, but this tended to simplify the elevation quite a bit, just have larger doors.
Other questions? Yes, Councillor Doughty.
And through you. I also had a question. I have 2 questions, actually. One was also the space of the car. I was trying to figure out if I guess engineering would have also said that there's enough space to kind of back in and out and reverse it to get into the furthest garage. The closest to the King Street garage would be a tricky one, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's the one we worked on, actually. Yeah. So where we staked out the corner, and then Steve drove his vehicle, which is an SUV, in and out of the garage just to make sure it would work okay, and how we'd maneuver to back out or get out. So it's something that we took seriously, but we need that space in order to negotiate that. I should mention, which I didn't, that the area that we'd be driving on would be a type of paver that would allow water to penetrate, so that we didn't have drainage issues, but it would all be area for driving.
Okay, and thank you for that. And okay. So my other question was the wall that encloses the staircase.
Yes.
So from King Street, because of the fence, you don't actually see the beautiful part of the observatory, like the glass. You won't be able to see that because that's covered. So what the people would see is the blank brick wall that encases the staircase. And I wonder if there's been some thought to make that look more appropriate and almost matching, or more complementary to the actual building, to the main building.
Okay, that's a good question, actually, because it's something that designers of alterations to heritage properties struggle with constantly. How do you approach design work that recognizes and respects the original building and recognizes and respects that this isn't original to the site. And the Sydenham District Plan does say that, we're not looking to replicate old stuff here, although I've made a career on it. But it's that wall will be stone. It'll be a stone that is a similar type of stone to the garden wall at the south end of the property, to the stonework that encases the carriage house at the south end of the property, and it isn't the same kind of cut stone that is used in portions of the main house, and that maintains the secondary nature or even tertiary nature of the ancillary building or this support building to the main house. So the main house needs to remain sparkling, and even though between the garage doors we have one element of cut stone there in recognition of the quality of stone that is used in the main house, the majority of the stonework we use is a little bit more utilitarian. It's the same type of stone pattern that's on the carriage house of 81 King Street as well. So it's a little more workmanlike configuration. But it was just recently at the site, and the stonework is being repointed. I think there's only portions of the main building that need to be repointed, and the garden wall at the south end of the property is repointed, as is the carriage house. And to look at that wall, I mean, I'm a sort of architectural geek in this, but it's a piece of art. Like, that is a beautiful, beautiful stone wall. And there are many stone walls in Sydenham Ward that are of this magnitude that offer a great view for the public as craftsmanship of old. Does that answer your question, or did I ramble on?
It does a little bit. It's not going to be like all of a sudden a red brick or anything like that. You just by what you said.
It'll only be stone. Yeah, they'll only have stone or wood on this building.
And I guess I was also wondering if it could be it's just a square. All of a sudden, like, nothing there is kind of square, and that's just a square. If you've kind of given that some thought to make the angle perhaps a bit more interesting.
Well, the main house is bold and robust and blocky. It doesn't have, stuff on it. Although, if you were to go up into the roof of that building, the brackets are beautiful with little dragons on them, all in metal, but you can't see that. When you see the bracket is this wide and it's this big, just a big chunk that's up there. And this building is designed like that, in big chunks. So we've tried to respect that.
Okay, thank you. Other questions on heritage attributes? Jennifer?
The little button beneath the microphone.
Every time. I echo your sentiment about it being like a blank wall. We had a similar issue on a property to the other side, I believe, where it was, just like a large mass. I love the idea of it being stone. I think that, something that recognizes or draws from the heritage, maybe having it a stonework that's more similar to the actual house, even if it is done in a more modern style, something that, brings it a bit together so there's not so much of a contrast. So like having a modern style with more adjacent or more modern or more workman-like stone. I think you might be pushing it a little bit too.
Sure.
So having more detail or just the stone that references the house, that might be a nicer, sort of softer. I love the idea of the conservatory. I think that's gorgeous. I'd love to see more glass. As it possibly even for the second story. I don't know if that would be an interesting relationship to explore. The other thing, roof lines. So I was trying to understand how it works. There's a extension of the current wall that goes all the way up, and then like almost like a small parapet, and then a low slope, and then a more steep slope. So almost like is that what I was understanding from the drawings, possibly?
Okay. I'll start with the first one. That's the stone. We could introduce dressed stone. It could frame that wall. It could run along the top of the wall. I did include cut dressed stone in other portions of this. I just hadn't thought of employing that, but certainly we could look at employing some dressed stone, smoother stone like you would find in the main house in order to reflect those two. That's a possibility for sure. The main, and I would like more glass in the conservatory as well, and that can easily be done. We were just showing a glass roof, and we could show more of a glass roof. We didn't want to get into difficulties as we get up into the peak of that with snow melt up in there, so it isn't open, but it could essentially be glass all the way to the top, really. It's on the north side. It's not going to get a lot of sunlight. So that's definitely a possibility. The last component was, what was your last part, Jen?
Roof composition.
Oh, yes. The building is a shed roof. It's just a shed roof. It's got a wall along the property line. It's got a shed roof that comes down to the front, just like the existing carriage house. What I've done is I've just taken the last 3 or 4 feet of the rafters and just tipped them up slightly to create those shed dormers. So inside, you're going to see a simple shed roof, and then every so often, in order to get a bit of height and relief, because the headroom in the existing carriage house is about 6'6" at the wall. Like and we'd like to keep this one as low as possible so it doesn't impose too much on the yard space that's left or the driving space that's left. So it's just a shed roof, and as the shed roof comes down about 4 to 6 feet from the wall that faces 85 King, it just flattens out a bit in order to give a little bit more headroom. That's what those sheds are. But otherwise, it's just a shed roof. Yeah, it doesn't have a mansard or a double roof or anything like that. It's one slope.
Good, thank you. William.
Thank you, Rich. I think the project is very exciting, and I think it's very complicated, obviously. I think the right people are on the job here, too. I'm really pleased about the materials being used. I mean, that's above and beyond it. And I think sometimes we forget to thank the owner who's doing these renovations to the property. I mean, it's definitely pride of ownership, above and beyond, I think. And it's people like this that really help the heritage part of Kingston be maintained. And I look forward to the future of this project. I think it's very exciting, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions on heritage? Jane?
I just have about the kind of, I'll say, cluttered look on King Street, so the vision that you see as you walk by. And I know one of these, I think it's P3, referred to skylights.
Yes.
So I'd like you to clarify the conservatory and what kind of windows and things you're going to be putting into it, and how, if any, in any way you could simplify that whole facade.
Well, the conservatory will have almost, a very similar configuration to the one that is on the original drawing. That's what I was looking at doing. I wanted to create something that had historical relevance to the main house. It could have more windows, as has been asked already, and those windows could be broken up more than a flat sheet of skylight. there is always a balance between recreating old and respecting an historic configuration. So if it was a big sheet of glass with no mullions in it, with no muntins or mullions in it, then it wouldn't be like the old conservatory, but it would be of a similar form to the conservatory. But we could certainly introduce more glass, and we could introduce more breaking up of the glass into a pattern like you'd see in an historic conservatory. We just haven't got that far yet in the design. But the actual configuration is pretty characteristic of conservatories. You usually have cut-off corners, octagonal shapes. If it's a dressy conservatory, of which Kingston used to have many. They're gone now for maintenance reasons, probably, but so the more I break it up, the more maintenance we'll have. But maintenance or quality materials or cost of construction has never been something that has stopped this owner from proceeding with something. He researches constantly researches on what slate's used on the roof, what color, where does it come from, is it laminated or not? I mean, he certainly tests my knowledge constantly.
Good, thank you. Other questions on heritage attributes? Excuse me. Seeing none, oh, Zoe, sorry. Got to put your hand right up.
I just have a couple of questions. I'm wondering why you've chosen wood siding instead of stone. Because it says wood siding stained to match carriage house, but there's no wood on the carriage house, and staining it would just make it gray. So I'm wondering why you haven't chosen to make it stone to actually match the true facade of the carriage house.
That actually came up in early discussions as a way of distinguishing, this is new, that's old. So it is a matter of replicating a total stone carriage house. But we wanted to maintain that color scheme that is consistent with the main house. Now there is wood in the main house, and there is some wood in the carriage house, which is primarily trim, I agree. There is no upper boarding, so the wood that will be used will be fairly flat and isn't meant to stand out or be detailed in any way. It's just offered the opportunity to clearly speak that this is a newer building, this is a different building.
Hmm. Well, the striations that you get with siding would be very different aesthetically rather than the true blockiness of something that is a stone. Mm-hmm. So my concern would be that, I mean, in order to have this stand out in a nice way, it would just be very disparate to the existing building that's there, and I'm thinking that those things might clash. I'm also wondering why you've chosen steel railings here. Are those designed to match the house at 85 King Street? Are they going to be black, or are they a more modern piece that'll be shinier?
Okay, that's good. That's good. The railing system, when you're working on a building, they say, well, do we replicate? There's a lot of ironwork in the cresting that's around that building. It could be decorative, or do we keep it simple? Metal means that we keep it, that it's finer, that it doesn't have to be as robust. And if it was a wooden railing, do we go with a wooden decorative railing system similar to the main house, or do we create something new? So we're trying to minimize the impact of details that one might question, old or new. Like some people would install a glass railing, like just get rid of the whole view thing at all. And we're hoping to be able to use metal to minimize the effect of the rail, in other words, the mass of the rail. But we would like to also not have the rail system, any railing system, conflict with, say, the south garden wall, which is all stone, and we'd like that stone to be clearly identified when you're coming into the rear gardens of 40 Simcoe and the rest of the buildings down the street. I don't know if you've been in that garden. But you can clearly see that stone wall, and we'd like the rail system to not impede that stone wall. So we're kind of dancing around metal railing, glass railing. I'm staying away from wood in that sense, just to diminish the impact that a railing would have on the architectural character.
Right. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you. Other questions, Heritage? Matthew.
Thank you, Bruce. That was great. Curious, I looked through the package. It's like quite big.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out a relation to the sort of back kitchen of the main house and the carriage house, what the actual height is in context in relation to those two buildings. And does that make sense?
The back addition, you mean the like servants' quarters addition of the main house?
Yeah, the main house.
Gee, I'm not actually sure how high that built. Do you know, Mark? Oh yeah. Oh, it's definitely higher than the carriage house. Yeah. Yeah, actually, one of the pictures that might be good to see, if I can bring it back, is see this is how I knew about what to do. Is see the top of the porch? So if you're in the street, you can see that's the wooden porch. Like that's how high the addition is from the wooden porch. So the wooden porch, so it goes up higher at this end, but where this elevation meets it, it's almost the same height as the porch. So the addition, the back addition is up here, comes up here, about that height.
Thank you. Other questions, Zoe?
Sorry, I have a question. I was looking through this earlier and saw that a carport link between the house and the carriage house had been previously approved but not constructed. And in order to construct something like that, it would block the entire driving path onto the property, right? So anything to do with that carport link has since been dismissed.
That's what we're thinking.
Okay. Thanks.
Other? Jane?
Yeah, one other question. I'm a little confused about the existing stone wall and the exposure, and the whole drainage issue there at the back, the crickets and all of that. And I just wondered if you could. So who does the existing stone wall? What building does that belong to?
81 King.
Oh, I see. Okay, and I guess I want to ask the reason that this building has to be, the new building here has to be on the property line. Can you explain that?
It's just to negotiate the vehicles in the rear garden. Yeah, that side yard there.
Thank you. A few questions then, Don?
Just a quick question while we're in there. Looking at the view of the conservatory from King Street, I noticed the lower set of windows are divided into fairly small panes, but the ones directly above it are not. Yes. It seems sensible to me to carry the multi-pane view right up to the angle. Sure.
Yeah, and I think that was what we were thinking originally, and we could certainly continue along that. We'd like it to be a glass roof. We would have to ensure that we located a fabricator that had the panes of glass. When they used to, and this can happen in a conservatory, conservatories had all metal framing, all metal roofs. Because it was a conservatory, it didn't matter if things dripped. So a lot of dripping occurs in a conservatory because you have a metal that in cooler weather, any humidity inside grabs onto that and causes moisture and condensation. And so if it's often places like this are used in seasons where or for purposes that you really wouldn't want that dripping. So in order to have muntins, we'd have to look for a system that gave us that break. There aren't any skylight systems out there that do that, so they're shown as sheets here. So this is where I am. This is what I found. If I begin finding muntins, roof window systems, that aren't purely for a greenhouse, I join comments that have been brought by this committee up and say, yeah, let's put muntins on, and we might have that research done, next week. But that's what we'd like. Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah, sorry. In relation to that remark about the sort of conservatory assemblies, like a Victorian glass house is all made out of cast.
That's right.
And it's usually like a T, like an upside down T that kind of guts out, and then you bed the glass panes in the thing. And then the other thing to manage that, they would beaver tail the panes of glass, so the water is brought to the center and runs down each pane.
Yes.
But the condensation on the inside obviously does fall down because it's a conservatory where you keep your plants and have tea.
Yeah.
Anyways, I know it's not Canada, but there's a bunch of suppliers in the UK that sell those parts.
Yeah.
So
and it could be that we'd have an internal. I have done greenhouse roofs T-bar system, like a welded T-bar system, and bed the glass and then put a stop on it, and then constructed or had detailed a little gutter on the inside that caught any of those drips and took it to the outside. I mean, it's all very much fun for me, but I don't live there, so I haven't got to that detail part of it. I would like a patterned roof like you'd see on a traditional conservatory, but I don't want to saddle my client with a huge amount of maintenance and labor either.
Good, thank you. We've had an hour now. Any last heritage questions? Seeing none, then, members of the public, 5 minutes, and you get to speak once.
There we go. Hello, morning. I'm Mark Derbyshire. I'm here with my wife, Julie. We're the owners of 8183 King Street East, which is the property directly next to what we've just been talking about here this morning. And I've sent a note to you all. The gist of my note in a nutshell is all about setback. So cutting right to that, to me, I've got real concerns with the setback as it relates to the works that we've been shown here this morning. 4 reasons I would like to share with you why I think from a heritage perspective, we'd want to see setback on this property. The first being the proposed works here, as we saw today, would require us to alter our 1841 stable roof line, which I've got real issues with. I mean, this property is over 178 years old. Andre Scheiman, the heritage consultant that we worked with on our works, felt that it was one of the oldest structures in that area. As you recall, that whole block was owned by 8183 King Street in the beginning. And as the properties were sold off, it was on the other side of the stable. So, over the last 90 years, this property, before we purchased it, was an apartment. Lots of work and damage had been done to the property, but the stable itself that, they're proposing would need to be altered, escaped most of it, which is wonderful to see. And there's a little bit of a misconception that we've changed the roof line on that property, which is not true. That stable on the inside, when you go into it, you still see exactly that it was a stable back in the early 1800s. The exterior walls have remained unchanged. There was a 1950s garage structure built in front of it that was dismantled by our works, but the stable itself, the 4 walls of the stable have remained intact. There certainly is a roof line that overhangs Mr. Sorensen's property. It has done so for well over a century, owner to owner to owner, as it goes through that. And, certainly the amount of rain that would come from that would be so minor. But I'm happy as we undertake our works to look at how we redirect that water. The second area to me is access and concern for when this structure was being built, the damage that it could do to our property, both historic and new. Our property, whether it's the heritage element of it or the new part of it, it's all a part of the Heritage Ward now, and is all a part of the history as we go forward. And so building a structure so close to another structure when there's other alternatives, to me, just is going to bring about damage that I would like to see avoided. The third area is light. When we built our structure, we understood at some point there may be an opportunity for someone to build next to us. We did feel there would be setback, and for the use of the building that we have there, the intended use, to build a wall, another institutional type wall in the Sydenham Ward, to me, to block out all that light, just won't allow that existing building to achieve what we have intended it to be. And not only for us, but for the years and the generations to come. And I am, quite concerned by that structure, building another wall in that area. The last area that I've got is about deterioration. You get two structures too close together, deterioration is going to happen at a much more rapid pace. And while that may not affect me and my ownership of the property, I certainly could see it happening as it goes forward. And given that we've got a choice today not to have them so close together, I would encourage that. In the applicant's information that was submitted, it was very clear that they wanted to avoid the gap as it related to 46 Simcoe Street butting up to our stable at the back of the house. Which is fair enough. But we'll see as they see it relating to our existing carriage house as it lines up, the very gap that they're trying to avoid, they're going to create. And I might suggest give it more and more solve that problem. So, you look at these four reasons, and I would ask that you take a look at that from a heritage perspective as we go through that. I think I'd be remiss to say while I'm here, I think a 6-car garage is very excessive. I think there is other alternatives to looking at how that could be struck and amount to a 6-car garage, but that by any standards is massive. It may give some opportunity there. I also think it gives the opportunity as we go forward that this could become a multi-dwelling again. That wasn't the intent. Yep, that's our 5 minutes, so I'll turn it over to my wife, or can I continue for her?
No.
Okay, for her, I'll let her finish.
As a separate member of the public, she can speak for up to 5 minutes. Lovely.
So just to continue from what my husband was saying, the 6-car garage is excessive in its size, and it does provide the opportunity to one point in the future become a multi-living unit. Mr. Sorensen did have a carriage house on his property when he purchased the property and has since changed that to living space. And this certainly does set itself up to, once again, create an opportunity for a multi-unit living space in the future. I think it's going to hit a plethora of zoning issues as it goes forward to planning, but we really do urge you to take a look at it from a heritage perspective when you're looking at the construction of it, the destruction of our heritage stable, and what that will mean in the future. We're all part of a heritage district, and while at times we do inherit issues that we would not like a zero setback, it would seem unreasonable to create such a zero setback when we actually have the choice and we have the opportunity to do so. So as the owner of 81 King Street, it's our goal to be good custodians of the property, not only for today, but for the future. And we ask you to help us to be good custodians of this property by enforcing the setback from a heritage perspective.
Good, thank you. Public? Last comment? 1 minute? 1 minute. You know me.
Okay. I think that the development that we're proposing at 85 King Street does have to take care as to how it interfaces with 81 King Street. And we have been in correspondence with owners of 81 King Street. We understand their concerns. The intent is to create something that does take that into consideration, the issues of that interface. That's not an easy part of this job, and that still needs to be completed and developed. But we think what we have in place now addresses that to a great deal.
Good, thank you very much. All of your comments, committee and public, were taken into consideration. Ryan, I'm sure you've got long, detailed notes on that, and we look forward to you returning with an application at some point.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Councillor Doughty.
I just have a question. The 81...
Not on this, you don't.
No, I don't?
No.
Done?
No,
okay.
No, sorry. See, I can be nasty as well.
There'll be lots of other opportunities.
The next item is
317 King.
I'm just trying to find the page for it. 317 King. And it starts
it might be big. It might be easier to do while I'm right here.
85, page 49. Again, it's a pre-application, a pre-consultation. So staff will be introducing.
Okay, it's there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I saw the applicant in the hall. I assume they're here. But I can give you a bit of an overview of this particular project. Would it be appropriate to take a break and quickly run and find our applicant? Because I know she was here. I saw her peeking in.
We do have to be out of here by 11:45 for another meeting. So
okay.
If you want to get started, I'll go take a look.
Okay. Yeah, dark-haired lady.
Okay, go ahead and start, Brian.
Well, in lieu of the applicant being present, I'm certainly willing to take notes on any further comments this committee has on this particular one. So this is also King Street. This is King Street West. The property is further down the street on the westernmost, it's on the north side of King Street West, just east of Center Street. It is the westernmost unit of the 4-unit row house known historically as Hales Cottages. So this is a closer view of the property from above, and this is the property that we're looking at currently. It is designated under Part 4 of the Heritage Act in 1975, so one of the earlier ones. It was originally a row of 5 small houses that were built for Charles Hales as rental properties for government officials when Kingston was the capital of the United Provinces of Canada. The designation bylaw notes that the row has been well maintained and in spite of modifications to the front and back serves as an excellent example of early prestige row housing. The upper stories are lit by large gabled dormers, originally 2 dormers to a unit, each having 2 windows. So what is before you today? The applicant is seeking preliminary feedback for a proposal to enlarge the second story to allow a greater living space on the upper floor of the building. So these are some of the pictures. The plans, the applicants have provided 4 options for the front modification, options A, B, C, and D, which are in your agenda package, as well as 2 options for alterations to the rear. Each of the options include the removal of the dormers, enlarging the second story to include 3 sets of windows on each elevation in a type of large shed dormer. The original location of the gable roof, the original location and gable roof profile of the dormers are to be reflected in the front renovations in the various options that are provided, but not in the rear plans. So no increase in the height of the overall building is proposed, and no change of use is proposed. So in terms of feedback that we've received to date, Kingston Hydro has noted that safe clearances from the service lines need to be maintained. If they cannot be, isolation or removal through Utilities Kingston service request is required. The land use team noted this is a residential designation in the official plan, and it's in the A zone in the Old City zoning bylaw. The property has some conflicting interpretations in the zoning. It is noted as a row house by definition, which is not a permitted use in this zone. So enlarging it would require a Planning Act application through a zoning or a minor variance. In addition, it appears that the dormers don't meet the terms of the dormer provisions in the zoning bylaw, so zoning amendment or a minor variance will be required, and the necessary documentations will be required as part of that submission. In terms of heritage comments, there is a few noted in the agenda package. The applicants will need to demonstrate conservation of the identified heritage attributes. And it's noted that based on best practices, accepted best practices in heritage conservation, Parks Canada standards and guidelines, etc. New construction should complement and conserve the existing heritage attributes of the building. The removal of what appear to be original dormers is an irreversible and significant impact to this important row, a row that has suffered significant alterations and losses over its history, including alterations to all the other dormers on this row. This is the only one that still has these dormers in this form. Heritage staff encourages the applicant to review other alternatives for creating additional living space, such as additions to the rear or the like. A heritage permit's required, and we require a heritage impact statement to accompany that to look at the impact of this. As well, we ask for additional details such as materials, colors, window and roofing types of this design as part of their heritage permit plan. So this was circulated, and the comments from this committee are included in your agenda package. I believe the applicant is here, and you're welcome to come up and add to what I've said. Yep. I'm not sure how you run it, but it's just a power. Oh, okay, there you go.
Okay, yeah, you have to close that one.
Let's see the way.
Good morning. My name's Catherine Stone. I own the property with my husband at 317 King Street West, one of the Hales cottages. I think Ryan's gone through most of the history with you. Just in my research, I have found that over the 200 years this property has been in existence, that it was designed originally to all be consistent cottages. It was one row, and they all looked the same. Over the years, the 5th property to the west burned down, and it was replaced by a full 2.5-story, 2 townhouses. To the east of us are the remaining 3 cottages, which were all taken up they had a wall added over the front so that they could have 2nd-story space, because the 2nd story in the current premises is very challenging. And that was done in the 1920s, when it was deemed it was already not appropriate for their current day living. So we're now 100 years past. And in my research, what I've found, over reading through all the comments that were made, the biggest part of the contention is the removing of what are considered original dormers. And I found the original plans for this property at the University of Toronto, where they have the Fisher Library of Rare Documents. And I found the original plan by William Terrell. It's hard to look at because it is very old, but you can see that it is a row of one-story houses, and it is undeniably our property. And when I look at the property, this makes much more sense, because on our house, the front dormers do not align with the back dormers. They're a larger size. They have tried to copy what they look like. Their positioning on the roof is completely different. So understanding that if this was done at construction, they would have at least lined up, but they don't. If you go to, now, how do I make this go forward, Ryan? Sorry. The down button. So can you all see that? I think it's hard to discern it. You can probably see it. The lower range, you can see the peak dormers. That's very difficult. Actually, we will be leaving this so you can see it, but it distinctly shows a single story and the defining features of the 3 brick chimneys which separated the units. Actually, there were 4 at the original because the end units were still there. You can see the peak pediment over the doors, the windows, which are 3-paneled, and the front steps coming down, the windows flanking the front doors, and a plain roof with absolutely no dormers. Down there, sorry. This one right here. Perfect, down, okay. Yeah. So on the second slide, there is, you can see a blow up, a zoom in of the roof. And this shows their misalignment, the different sizes that they are. So understanding that during construction, regardless if they've made the back one smaller, they would have been lined up. And they are significantly off, different positioned, and much different scale. So this leads me to believe that they were not there. And so I feel that saving something that was not a part of the history, when the intent of the original property was to have all the buildings look the same. So I took to mind all the comments that were made, and in looking at what we proposed originally, I did a bit of a change about. So the next slide shows you the range. So you can see the 2.5-story building in gold beside us. You can see ours with the 1.5 stories, and following down, there are 2 units that have dormered fronts, and then the final unit, which has a gable end. Originally, I was following the line of the dormered fronts, feeling that we'd just follow along with the neighbors. However, in light of the information that I read, that the dormers are non-conforming, and then I thought, I think it would look better on the street if it was bookended so it matched the end unit. So you had a gable front, and 2 matching in the middle. So this is what we've proposed. It looks seamless that it fits in. All the elements are maintained. The lower level is retained. The verge board with the dental molding is put back on the house. It is missing currently except for over the porch. The shake shingles on the eyelash that comes out the front, that is maintained, and the gable roof as I said, bookends to the end unit. So they do look like a set now, which was the original intent. The next one shows what we are looking at, what it would look like from the front. So the lower level is all maintained. The finishes match the adjoining buildings. It's a stucco finish. The upper windows, I know there were comments on the different mutton patterns. We were trying to match the transom above. That is a small detail to us. I did try the 2/2. To me, it doesn't really fit with the style. I would rather go with, I think, if you go back to the one before, you can see we actually took the top of 311, which is the house with the gable end, and you can see the cross muttons. I would prefer that look. So they match the windows below. It seemed to be an issue, so I'm bringing it up. To me, it's a small issue what the pattern of the muttons is. I'm more interested in some roof space, but I also want it to look right. The rear of the properties has always been very dissimilar for as long as I can remember it, and I'm sure for everybody. In everything that I've read up, in my research, they all say that it is it's a private lane and that all the houses are dissimilar, and they are quite dissimilar. Oh, sorry, I'll get it soon. So I've added some photographs of the back of our house. I've added the view from Center Street. You can see, all you can see is we are not raising the roof, so that is what you'll see even if we take the roof up. Because it's very treed, and there is a row of garages at the back, it is impossible to see our house, even from the lane, because it's hidden by what was an old carriage house, a stable for horses. The picture at the top shows the house right beside us. Unfortunately, and then you have to go to the next one, because you can see they took it back to the stone. The next person is stucco with an addition, and they have a dormered roof. And finally, the back of the house at 311, which shows a gable end, which is what ours would show. Yep. Am I going the wrong way again? Oh my gosh. There we go. So we've taken the back of our house. We've maintained the lower level and the lower openings. The uppers, we tried to maximize the light and simplify it. The back is stucco. I did try some of the options that were sent to me about adding the eyelash and so on. I would rather have a deep molding over the top of the door and leave the rest very simple. The size of the windows were brought into question. I think once the plan is approved and we get an actual floor plan, it will determine what the size of the windows are. But they've been split so they can be fixed panes and operating to let ventilation through. And the upstairs right now is extraordinarily dark because there's very little light that gets into it. I've included some drawings that show you why we're applying for the roof to go up. Not only do we think it would look better in the row, but you can see of the red, inside the red is the only usable space that is at 7 feet. You can see that the front wall, if you take where the windows are marked to the south, our inside wall actually moves in from there 3 feet. At the back, the house is also not positioned. It is back almost 5 feet from the wall below and the adjoining neighbors' properties. So what we're asking is to take it out and bring it up, not change the roof line at all. We just need a small portion of wall so that we can get some usable space Right now, inside the windows, you come in 3 feet, and then you are at 3-foot height. And it ramps up to in the center of the building to a mere 7 feet. And this was a section showing you the usable space at the top, how it is stepped back at the stair level. On the landing, you have only 6 feet height, and at the very top of the riser, it's only 5'6". The 7 feet cannot be extended. That's common throughout the properties, but that's all we're looking for. And this is some of the interior shots to show you how, even when you go in the room, you're walking into the side of these dormers and how little space there is. I've put some notes at the end that I think what our design does is meet all the requirements. In all the information I looked up, they had a common theme, a common range designation criteria. And this was common to all the properties. When you go to City Hall here in Kingston and ask for information on the range, this is what you will get. And it says character defining elements, which are in relation to it being housing residents for the Governor General, who were going to work for the Governor General, because it was partway between Cartwright House and City Hall. But the character defining elements is the unit is 3 bays wide with a gabled entrance porch on either side of the door. Our wide windows with side lights and transoms. Front entrances have fan lights, side lights, and doors recessed in stone arches with it has a unified wooden base molding, a canopy formed by deep eaves decorated by verge boards, stone wall at the chimney line, and 3 large brick chimneys that mark the division of the row into 4 units. These have all been maintained. And the common other element that was always put forth in every piece of information, including not just heritage information, but from books of the time, written later. You have to understand most of the information that was written about this was done in the 70s. So it said in every iteration that the common summation, in spite of modifications to the front and back, this row of houses serves as an excellent example of early prestige row housing in every situation. So in spite of. So my point is, I don't believe we are getting rid of anything that is historical by taking the dormers out, and I believe it will improve the row, take it back to its original intent of looking purposeful, add to the streetscape of King Street, and be a credit to our heritage community. And we'd like to save this house.
Good, thank you very much. Committee members, comments and questions? Matthew?
Thank you so much, that was great. A few things. I think it seems unfair that everybody else has had their roof line changed, and then to say that you shouldn't be able to, that just seems unreasonable. I do, on the other hand, think, though, that there's like a few considerations. You know, your neighbor at the far end with their sort of gabled roof like that, theirs drains off in 2 separate ways, and yours just will run right into your neighbor's gable wall. So I don't know if there's going to be like plans for a big cricket there or something to manage that. So that
yeah, it's actually called a cross gable. So if you probably shows in that roof blow up. Now, let me see if I can get back there. Yes, because when you look from it overhead, it looks like a cross, so there is a valley at the chimney and at the other side, so the water is dispersed.
And then the second I was going to say was, I do agree with some of the other members that I think the windows in the rear are a little like disproportionate, although I do like the configuration that you've kept in the front, and I think that's in keeping, especially with the drawings that you showed us, with the original windows. And I don't think that windows always come in a balanced fashion in that way. They might be balanced in the building. Right. So I think that you're okay there. Okay. And as well, too, another note to everybody, I think that drawing that you brought up showing no dormers, was there a note on that stating that that was the as-built?
This was 1811, so
yeah,
no.
So I just as like a warning, often there's a lot of, maybe Jennifer could agree to this, there's a lot of drawings that get put out as plans, and so that might be an early iteration of the building, and it might have been built with dormers. I
completely agree, and that's why I went to the trouble of actually looking at the sizing of our dormers, the spacing of them, because I firmly believe even at that early date, those were hand-built and they would have been aligned, even if they were different sizes.
Yeah, and on that point, I think like that's a dangerous assumption as well, on account of the fact they might have been placed separately to accommodate things that aren't there now.
I'm sorry, I can't.
So they might have been placed different, not aligned, to accommodate a stairwell, partition walls, or something. They're not always balanced in that fashion, especially on, if there's such a strong street facing on one side, you might have a different configuration on the back. So I think it's just a dangerous thing to just make broad assumptions like that sometimes. Anyways, just letting everybody know that that's not always the case. In the same way that, Steve, the previous guy that up here, his building looks different on the front than it does in the back. So anyways, thanks.
Well, I think that was why I really came to the conclusion that they were probably added after the fact and at different periods, so that I almost assumed that the back was added first in order to give you room to put the stair in.
Good, thank you, Matthew. Other questions, comments, thoughts? Don?
Well, a lot of possibilities here, and and a lot of details to think about too. But I think you've raised a sort of possibility of going to a front gable roof, and I think I agree with Matthew that that's going to create problems that you really don't want to create. Your earlier approach of going more or less similar to your neighbor's roof line and sort of dormer line, I think works much better. And in fact, my suggestion would be to essentially copy the Sedinsky's roof line. It'll just join smoothly in. It'll continue to look like a row housing, which is what it was originally meant to do. So I think that's what you should really think about very carefully. Just essentially copying their configuration for the front. And I guess at the back, as you say, it's I don't have any serious problems with your proposal there, but I think maybe the windows are disproportionately large, and certainly the drawing, one of the alternatives had sort of asymmetrical muntins, which I don't think is appropriate in this period of a house to have kind of asymmetric windows. So keep the windows simple, and even on the front windows, I think I would suggest not trying to do anything particularly fancy, because you don't want the new windows to compete with the lower original windows. So keep the upper windows simple. I would say 1/1 or 2/2, just simply like that. And otherwise, well, I mean, I guess you understand this particular procedure. You're getting feedback from a number of people, which may be different, may not all be the same. You've got to come forward with a, kind of weigh the opinions that you're getting and come back with a plan that we can focus on in a little more detail. So basically, I have no problem with expanding your second floor to make livable space, because all your neighbors have done that. I mean, I think that's, whether those dormers are original or not, is not, to me, so important now. It's the fact that you need the space, the neighbors have done it, you want this to look sort of like a sort of harmonious row of houses, so that's the kind of suggestions that I want to make. So I hope that helps.
Yes.
William.
Thank you. Thank you for that on-site meeting too. That was very interesting, and it really provided a lot of real-time information, and I really enjoyed that. So thank you for setting that up.
Thank you for coming.
Okay. I have to agree with Don in what he's just stated there. And I have two I've already sort of looked at. What I personally like, I liked option D at the front and option A at the back, and window configurations I think we can consider, but I do agree with Don that I don't really love this other type of roof design. I think there's some complications in that in reference to water and look and things like that. But the original ones where you were going, and when we discussed it on site, as of option D or any of those, with option A at the back and windows, you need windows, so all these things can be looked at, but I don't see any reason not to support your application to move forward on this. So thank you for coming today.
Thank you, I appreciate it. My husband isn't here.
Okay.
Because he likes the other one as well.
Right.
But when I read through the information about non-conforming and dormers and so on, I just see dollar signs adding up and up and up before we even get to starting any construction, because the property was designated the same day. The city declared it a non-conforming row house, which in my mind it should have been grandfathered because it's already there, and then you designate it, so you can't tear it down if you don't like it. And we just keep adding, so now they're saying the dormers aren't conforming, so that's why I really just threw my hands up and said, that's it.
Okay.
Good,
well,
thank you, William. Other questions?
That's a really
comments?
honest statement, thank you.
Jim?
This may be a question for our planning staff. I'm going to put on my planning committee hat for a second and try to get my head around why wouldn't this be an existing non-conforming use?
I'm not sure that's a heritage, but I'm sure Ryan's thinking of giving you an answer afterwards.
Okay.
Okay.
I will ask that question afterwards.
Heritage attribute questions. Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you
and
very
we look
much.
forward to a formal application at some point. Okay, we move on to the working group reports, which are on page 77. Are there questions on the Heritage Properties Working Group?
Yeah, the only report is for the review.
On any of the others? Otherwise, you need a motion to accept them. Bill, William, seconder for that motion. Don, thank you very much. Further discussion? Seeing none then, those in favour, those opposed, so those are accepted. And I would ask you to read through particularly the review, the Heritage Kingston Review Working Group 1 carefully. Emergency approvals? None. Motions? Notices of motion. Other business. Councillor Doughty.
I would to ask if they consider moving the meeting dates to perhaps the second Wednesday of the month instead of the third, because the third is right after a council meeting, and I'm just thrown there. And I don't know the process to make something like that.
There is a process involving notice and other aspects of work planning. So, Councillor Doherty, this is something that we can discuss offline with planning staff.
Okay, so that will be done. The only other business I would note is that last month we talked about the sign at Annandale and the problems of its size, and that in fact was accepted almost immediately after our meeting. So my understanding is the sign, as you approved it, can go ahead. And there's just an anomaly there, rightly so, on large signs on private property. Correspondence, I certainly draw your attention to Helen Driver's little note. We don't get those too often. Yeah, well, exactly. Next meeting, November 20, here. Am I missing anything? Except for a motion for adjournment. William, Councillor Doherty, thank you very much. Those in favour? Done.